In a multiverse drowning in its own blood and bad decisions, one skull keeps grinning through the slaughter. Franken Castle, the Punisher. Whether he's a cybernetic cop in 2099 executing billionaires for fun, a flaming cosmic ghost rider riding shotgun for Thanos, a stitched-up Franken Castle monster, or just a regular man pushed too damn far, every version ends the same way. Mountains of corpses, zero therapy, and the faint, dark chuckle of a guy who turned family man into the ultimate punchline. Welcome to Key Issues, and today we're going to cover the 10 most deadly versions of the Punisher from across the Marvel multiverse. Now, the title doesn't indicate it, but we are mostly discussing the deadliest comic book versions of Franken Castle, but I would be remiss to not mention the big screen versions of the character. Jon Bernthal, Thomas Jane, Dolph Lundgren, and Ray Stevenson were all excellent Punishers in their own right. While their shows and films have widely fluctuating opinions, I don't think anybody would say these men didn't all absolutely embody Frank's brutal side in their depictions. My personal favorite version of Frank is Jon Bernthal's PTSD-laden depiction of the character. Maybe that's just recency bias, but maybe it's a fact. I don't know. But rather than rank them, let me know who you think is the most accurate and brutal Franken Castle in the comments below. Why? Because it boosts the reach of this video. Now, let's get into the deadliest versions of Franken Castle within the comics. First off, we have Punisher Noir. Frank Castiglione Jr., son of a World War I veteran, grew up in the Bronx as an Italian Jewish boy after losing his mother to cancer. Life in the Prohibition-era New York led him to briefly join a child gang, but he left after refusing to rob a church, only to return home and find his father murdered by enforcers of the Jewish mob boss, Dutch Schultz. Trained by his father and inspired by a Pulp Fiction hero, Frank became the Punisher, systematically dismantling Schultz's organization and personally killing his father's assassins, including Jigsaw, Barracuda, and the Russian, before finally executing Schultz himself. With his vengeance complete and the police closing the case, Frank turned his attention to the greater evils, like Nazi Germany, setting the stage for him to carry on his war overseas. Next up, we have Franken Castle. After being killed and dismembered, Franken Castle was resurrected by Morbius, the living vampire in the Legion of Monsters, as a hulking, patchwork, Frankenstein-like monster known as Franken Castle. Empowered with superhuman strength, durability, and rapid healing, he continued his war on crime with even greater brutality, now operating as a literal monster in the shadows. During this period, he battled threats like the monster-hunting Hunter and clashed with various supernatural forces while struggling with his new, grotesque form. The arc eventually ended with Frank being restored to his normal human body via the power of the Bloodstone, but not before leaving a trail of destruction that further cemented his legend as an unstoppable force. Next, we have Punisher while he was working for the Hand. I guess you could call him the Hand-Enhanced Punisher. Trained and empowered by the Hand Ninja Clan, this granted him superhuman abilities, resurrection factors, and an army of elite assassin skills on top of his usual tactics. In the 2022 Punisher series by Jason Aaron, the Hand manipulated Franken Castle by resurrecting his deceased wife Maria to recruit him as their prophesized leader, the Fist of the Beast. Empowered by the demonic entity known as the Beast, Frank gained enhanced abilities including superhuman strength, clairvoyance to see other sins, and greater lethality while adopting a new Oni-inspired emblem. However, Frank began resisting the Beast's full corruption, particularly when ordered to kill a child, leading to an internal conflict and an external opposition from heroes like Daredevil and Elektra. Ultimately, he was captured by heroes, lost the Beast's powers, and was freed from the Hand's control and exiled to Weird World, where for a time, his one-man assault on the world was put to rest. I think we can all agree the next one is pretty awesome, and that is the Punisher War Machine. Franken Castle became Punisher War Machine during the Punisher series in 2017 and 2018, where Nick Fury Jr. recruited him for a Black Ops mission in the unstable nation of Cernia. Fury provided Frank access to the War Machine armor, Model 8, which he customized with his signature skull emblem on the chest plate, turning the high-tech suit into a devastating tool for his one-man war. Equipped with repulsors, missiles, and flight capabilities, Frank used the armor to assassinate the Cernian dictator General Petrov, and then refused to return it. continuing his crusade against criminals in the United States with overwhelming firepower. He eventually lost the armor when the recently revived James Rhodes confronted him and convinced Frank to hand it over. Frank was taken into custody, but ultimately broken out by Black Widow and the Winter Soldier. Listen, next up we have Jake Gallows, the Punisher 2099, and if you do not have a copy of this comic and you were raised in the 90s, I do not know how that happened because everyone has 3 to 4 copies in a long box somewhere. Jake Gallows was a police officer in the cyberpunk future of Marvel 2099 who became the Punisher 2099 after his mother, brother, and sister-in-law were murdered by corrupt corporate forces. Driven by vengeance and inspired by the legend of Franken Castle, he adopted the Punisher identity, skull emblem, and brutal methods to wage war on a criminal elite and oppressive system of 2099. Armed with futuristic weapons, armor, and a strict moral code, Jake quickly became one of the most feared vigilantes in a world dominated by megacorporations and Dr. Doom's rule. Over time, the violence and moral compromises of his crusade caused him to descend into greater ruthlessness, eventually leading him to serve as Minister of Punishment in Doom's government. Though more technologically advanced than the original Punisher, Jake's story explored how even the purest quest for justice can be corrupted by the brutal world around him. Next up, we have Angel Punisher, or Avenging Angel Punisher. In the late 1990s Punisher Purgatory miniseries, a despondent Franken Castle committed suicide, only to be resurrected as the Angel of Vengeance, also called the Avenging Angel, by the angel Gadriel. Granted heavenly powers, wings, and access to the weapons of heaven, Frank became a supernatural agent tasked with fighting demonic forces and punishing the wicked on a more cosmic scale. During this time, he discovered that the demon Oliver, disguised as a mobster from his past, had orchestrated his family's death to fuel a larger evil plan. Frank eventually lost his angelic powers after being taken to heaven and declining to fully serve the angels, returning to his human form and a traditional war on crime. In 1995, there was a one-shot published called Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe, written by probably the most prolific Punisher author of all time, Garth Ennis, where an alternate Franken Castle watches his wife and children die in the crossfire of a superhuman battle in Central Park involving the Avengers and X-Men. Enraged by the hero's carelessness and failure to protect innocent bystanders, Frank is approached in prison by a secret society of wealthy victims scarred by superhuman conflicts. They offer him unlimited resources if he agrees to exterminate every superhero and supervillain on Earth. Motivated by deep grief, rage at the collateral damage caused by costume freaks, and the belief that the world would be better off without them, Frank becomes the Punisher and embarks on a meticulously planned killing spree, using traps, ambushes, and stolen tech to take down heavyweights like Spider-Man, the Hulk, Dr. Doom, the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, and the X-Men. And he succeeds spectacularly, methodically wiping out nearly the entire Marvel Universe over several years. In the far future of Earth TRN 666, an aged Franken Castle, one of the last heroes to oppose Thanos as he systematically destroyed every hero and villain across the Marvel Universe, made a deal with Mephisto on his deathbed and became Ghost Rider. However, by the time he was resurrected, Thanos had left Earth, leaving Frank utterly alone, bound to Mephisto's service. Utterly alone, Frank spiraled into madness. Later, a badly injured Galactus arrives seeking a new herald to oppose Thanos. Frank accepted the power cosmic, transforming into Cosmic Ghost Rider, a flaming, skull-faced cosmic entity wielding both the spirit of vengeance and the power cosmic. His powers include superhuman strength and durability on a galactic scale, hellfire manipulation, the penance stare, energy projection, flight, matter manipulation, and immortality, making him one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel multiverse. This list only has 2 more entries, but the everyday Marvel Earth 616 Franken Castle is absolutely, hands down, the most deadly Punisher in comics history. Well, nearly. Especially when at his most unhinged or well-equipped, i.e. during major events or with temporary upgrades, Frank's tactical mastery, willpower, and body count make him the deadliest normal human ever to walk the Earth. However, this list would not be complete without what is undoubtedly the most grounded but terrifyingly efficient version of Franken Castle in history. No powers, just decades of unrelenting, ultra-violent warfare with an enormous body count and zero restraint. Punisher Max is widely considered to be some of, if not the best Punisher stories ever written, even if they are not within the mainstream Marvel 616 universe. Frank Castle is a grizzled, aging Vietnam veteran who has spent decades as a relentless one-man army waging a total war on organized crime in a grounded, street-level New York with no superhumans. Written primarily by Garth Ennis, this series portrays Frank as an unstoppable, morally uncompromising force of nature who methodically dismantles criminal empires through extreme violence, while exploring his psychological trauma and the personal cost of his endless crusade. And frankly, it's an absolute must-read for anybody who claims to be a fan of the Punisher. And those are the most deadly versions of the Punisher across the multiverse. One skull, infinite ways to paint the world red. Whether he's a cosmic monster, a stitched-up abomination, or just a pissed-off guy with too many guns, Frank Castle always finds new and creative ways to make sure crime doesn't pay. This has been Nick from Key Issues. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe and do all that other crap that YouTubers ask you to do. Now go hug your family before Frank decides they're in the way. Remember the motto, Punisher over everything.